Hello, and welcome to the amusement park. I am your host and resident muse, Carla. Thank you for joining me. This channel is your source for inspiration, creativity, and growth. Today's topic or today's video topic is a continuation in a series for critical thinking. I am going to reiterate why I chose critical thinking. Critical thinking for me in today's information age is extremely important, so much so that I thought enough of it to make this video series. The first video, however, that I made in this series of critical thinking was more about decision making and informed decision making. For me, that is the foundation of critical thinking. You have to have good, solid, objective, unbiased, or as unbiased as possible information in order to come up with conclusions and decisions that you would deem desirable. So get your pen and paper and let's get started in today's topic of critical thinking. Okay, so critical thinking is a term that is often used in education and professional development and everyday conversation. However, its meaning and the skills that are required to achieve its proficiency can sometimes be misunderstood or oversimplified. In this conversation or this video, we're going to explore what critical thinking really is from my perspective and possibly outline the fundamental requirements for developing a proficiency in this essential skill of today's world of information overload. Okay, what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the process of carefully and systematically analyzing, evaluating, and synthesizing information in order to make a reasoned judgment and decision. It's not merely about thinking, but thinking in a disciplined, structured, and reflective manner. If you need me to do any definitions of the terminology used in my lecture series or in my videos, just let me know. Maybe I'll even put a key down below, but I don't want to insult anyone with my definitions because I like to make them up myself. Okay. Next, key characteristics of critical thinking. The characteristics that I'll be discussing will be analytical, skeptical, objective, logical, and reflective. Let's start. Analytical is one of the key characteristics of critical thinking. And what analytical means is that you break down the information that you receive into smaller, more manageable parts for you to understand. So if you are trying to understand a definition, when you come across a word, a term, or a word or a term that is unfamiliar, you don't actually know what it means in the context of the definition, you stop there, you go define it, you make sense of that definition, you plug it back in, and you use it with the making sense definition rather than what was giving out. So when I said synthesize, if you are unfamiliar with what synthesize means by definition, not by context clues, because you actually want to understand the meaning of words so that when you engage in language and critical thinking, you use the appropriate terminology for effective decision making, informed decision making. So you have to do a little bit more in the analytical sector of critical thinking. And you take that big definition, you chunk it down into a way that makes sense for you. So, for instance, if I were to break the definition of critical thinking down into something smaller, I would say critical thinking is how you personally make sense of what you need to do, want to do, or maybe should do based on the information that you have at your access. You want to make the best decision, so you go through options, definitions, possible outcomes. Is so much. So that the process of carefully gathering information and making informed. That's it. See how I took it? I took it big, which was the definition I came up with for lecture. But then just now, real time, I broke it down. Critical thinking in the simplest form is about carefully processing information to make informed decisions. Carefully processing information to make informed decisions. That is critical thinking to me. Now, when I say careful, I don't mean it takes an extensive amount of time. It can be done in mere moments of a second. Most of us make our critical thinking decisions or informed decisions in moments of a second because we've gotten so good at it. But if you're not really good at it and you don't know how to filter information that's coming in from various areas of your experience, then this is going to be it's going to require effort, consistent effort on your part. And that consistent effort will build up mental muscle memory, kind of like if you had to learn the multiplication table by singing them. When the song starts, you just don't even have to think about it. You sing along. You can actually be thinking about, you could be texting another person, putting actual cohesive thought in your text while singing a song verbatim, because it becomes mental muscle memory, as I say it. Okay, so that was just analytical. The next one is be skeptical. That means question the validity of information rather than accepting it at face value. Even if the source of information is first-hand account, like I was there, I saw it, this is what I saw. That is one perspective of a complex story, unless they are the only perspective, in which case they will be the subject matter expert. Because if they're the only one, such as myself, then I'm the subject matter expert for anything that I create out of my imagination. You cannot get closer to the source rather than somehow figuring out how to read my electrical impulses. So, but be skeptical. Question everything. Question this. Find out for yourself. Define critical thinking for yourself. Evaluate images, data, especially images. I'm getting really good at this AI image making, and some of them pretty believable. But when you do it for a long time, when a video comes up, I can still, I'm not perfect. So please don't try to test me with videos. But for the most part, I can spot the alterations. Anyway, third point. Objective, approaching situations without letting your personal biases or emotions cloud judgment. What objective means is face value. For instance, this is a thing that is objective. What we name this thing, that is subjective. I could call it stationary. Someone else could call it a postcard. Others could call it card stock. It could be a wall covering. It could be a divider. It could be a bookmark. But no matter what, those are all subjective based on whoever is interacting with this. But the fact that it is a thing does not change. How I feel about it, what it smells like, I'm not going to taste it, but the characteristics of it are set. It is objective. And so in being objective, you just want to observe the isness of what you're looking at, even if it's just a situation. So if the situation is a couple people are having a very loud conversation that presents itself as hostile, that last part you interjected. Unless you can see arms and legs and flailing, or you can hear the verbiage, the words being used, and they are of the hostile, aggressive, or confrontational manner, and you merely see two people going physically, like, it may be mundane. It may be, I cannot believe that for 1 second I had to pay 50 cents for. It may not be an altercation. It may be an explanation. It may be a whole lot of other things. So objectively looking at a thing means you take your understanding out of it and you just present yourself with the isness of the thing, taking into consideration, for instance, this thing. It's thin. That is somewhat, it has, this is the volume, this is the width, this is the length. The texture is smooth, semi-smooth, not glass smooth, but not rough. The appearance is marbled, and that would be objective. And I'm saying marbled, but it could also be speckled. You see how I had to refine? Because someone else may not see this as marble. They may see this as speckled, plastered, spattered. But the length and the width and the height, all of those things are what they are. That's what I'm saying about objective. Logical is the next one. Ensuring reasoning is consistent and follows a coherent structure. Logical meaning you cannot just look at a thing and say it's a portal to a second dimension. It may be, but it's kind of not logical. It doesn't follow what we have as the laws of existence. This doesn't follow portal. I don't know if there's portal laws, but anyway, this does not come across as a portal. So it's that's illogical. This can be a surface to write on. That is logical. This could be used as a vessel to hold something, because I could fold it to hold something. I could fold it. This could be a form of entertainment. I could fold it into origami. This could be a demonstration of aerodynamics. I can make an airplane, a paper airplane, and find out how it moves through with the weight of itself, the characteristics of itself. Now that's logical. Those are all logical examples. But a portal or a blanket for the human body, a covering, a complete covering for human structure, adult human structure, not logical. So it has to make sense. Logical means it has to just make sense. But let me say something here when it comes to logic. It only doesn't make sense because it maybe hasn't been done yet. I am of the school of thought that and that goes to my other book. You might want to look at that book. Energy is currency. But if you put enough energy behind even the craziest thought, I am of the belief that it is possible. And I'll leave that there. And lastly, for the characteristics of critical thinking would be reflective, continuously evaluating your own thinking process, including your possible biases and assumptions. That means after you've reached your conclusion, read back through it as if it wasn't yours and see where you may have been biased or made assumptions or was subjective, meaning putting your opinion or your perspective into it and not just looking at it as a thing. I will say this is the premier stationery of America. That is not objective. That is subjective. That is my opinion. That is my perspective. And it may very well be singular. But at the end of my evaluate of me gathering these various pieces, which is analyzing, being skeptical of it, looking at the thing as it is, being objective, using my logic, or even if I have to define it and then use logic, do that as well. And then once I decide that this is in fact a writable, foldable, interactive structure thing, then I'm going to go back. I keep looking at myself. I'm going to go back to the top as if I didn't already define it. Now that's where you can kind of fine tune your biases, because if you already have it in your mind that you know what it is, you're not going to analyze it correctly. You're going to go into it like, all right, but I already know this is stationary. So what is the stationary doing? No. Go back as if it's not stationary and you are skeptical of your own findings. That's what I'm saying. So those were the key characteristics of critical thinking: analytical, skeptical, objective, logical, and reflective. The core purposes of critical thinking, there are three that I have isolated, and they are to achieve a well-reasoned, justifiable conclusion or solution. 1, 2, to enhance problem solving and decision making abilities, because the better you know how to evaluate, analyze, reflect, not infer, because that would be on the be objective. You get what I'm saying. Then the easier that problem solving and decision making abilities become, vastly easier. And 3 is to foster a deep understanding of complex issues and challenges. So that's where that muscle memory comes in. It starts off with simple things, and then it moves into the collective world that we hold in our hands every day. And videos or posts or lecture series then become a source of possible inspiration, creativity, and growth, because through the critical thinking process, you decide if this is a good fit for you. Because here's the other thing: because you personally don't subscribe, enjoy, like, believe, desire any of those adjectives, those verbs, just because you're not into it, don't believe it, don't want it, wish it didn't exist, I have a couple of those myself, doesn't stop it from being a thing. Now, if you want to know more about how I feel about things, you need to go over to my series on energy is the real currency of the human experience. I'm not going to get into it here, but some good stuff. So those are the parts that I'm making today. This video is going to be relatively small. On the next video, we'll talk about the fundamental requirements for proficiency, doing well, not amazing, like you can size up any situation, but just doing really well in critical thinking. And that will be the next video. Until next time, guys, stay amused.